Hey everybody, back for another video. This is going to be the third in the series. First time we saw how to sort of make a basic map starting off for a D&D campaign. Second video we saw about how to create monsters. This one I want to just sort of cover not so much character creation, but character creation within Roll20. Because you may have to do some stuff like that for your players. If you're just starting off and you have a new campaign, a lot of players aren't going to know all that much about what to do for character creation. So for Roll20, if you're doing it on your screen and not your player's screen, which I highly recommend if you've purchased the player's handbook through Roll20, which I did, and that was, I think it was about 20-25 bucks. It was definitely worthwhile. Gives you a lot of stuff and just makes it a lot easier to run things in the game. You can go up here to the add button on your journal tab, and you're going to do hit add character. And this is going to pop up a generic screen for your character. And what we're going to do is just going to make a generic barbarian for one of our players in our campaign. So we'll just start off with like a character sprite basically. So let's do choose file, and you need to have something ahead of time obviously. Let's just let's pull up something usable. Alright, let's go with this Dragonborn type character. And now we got to come up with a name for our character. Let's call him Grogzilla. Alright, now Grogzilla has to be assigned to one of the players in my campaign, so I'm just going to grab one of these guys and put him in. And it can be controlled and edited by that same character. If you don't do the same, it's not going to make much sense. We'll get to selecting the default token, or let's just see if we can do that now. If we can just pull it up here. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to drag this token onto the field, and we'll readjust it later, and we'll see why we need to change it later on. But for now, we're just going to use select token, and that'll be our default token for now until we change it. Going to do save changes, and we're going to populate this character into the field. Boom. All right. So we have our character. In the bio and info, about the only thing you can do is add biographic info, and then here in the GM notes you can write notes that your players aren't going to be able to see, and mainly it's just going to be stuff reminding you about story elements related to this player, things that you need to do differently with this character, so on. Nothing too fancy. The next thing is we're going to create the character, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the character tab, and we have three options here. We can create an NPC, which is just going to be a character for the DM to use to interact with the players or potentially fight them. You can edit directly, which is what I've used to create all the characters in my campaign up till now. But a relatively recent feature is the Character Mancer, which I've become a big fan of. So why don't we jump into the Character Mancer and see what that does for us. Click on Character Mancer. And so right now we're creating a level 1 character. And a lot of campaigns you'll start off at around level 3. It's not uncommon to go up to level 5 actually to start off. So we'll talk about leveling characters up a little later, but for now let's just make our level 1 character. And it's actually a pretty good system that they have for the Character Mancer. You can just go back to the screen you were at before, or we can proceed here. First thing we're going to do is going to select the race of the character. We got a lot of options for the player's handbook actually, but if you want something fancy like an Aarakocra or a Bugbear or something, you'll have to purchase Volo's Guide or one of the other things through Roll20. For me, I just have the player's handbook, so let's grab a Dragonborn actually. Let's make a Dragonborn character. Alignment, you can choose right here. Usually it doesn't really need to be something that you do immediately when the character creation process is going. Anything that's not selectable will be something that you can't really change anyway. Your language proficiencies will be here, and now we choose our Draconic ancestry. We're going to go with Brass, I think. Brass or Bronze. Let's try Brass. Alright. And then I'll pull it up here. And then it's got the relevant information. It's going to be added automatically, and that's just going to make life a lot easier. So we've got our Dragonborn. Going to go into class options. So we're going to make a Dragonborn Barbarian actually. And so now it's going to ask us weapon proficiencies, armor proficiencies are going to be loaded automatically, but we've got our options for our skill proficiencies, and we're going to go with Intimidation, and I think we're going to go with Athletics as well. Those are both great abilities for Barbarians. Any information that you need you can find here. The entire Barbarian character sheet information from the player's handbook is automatically loaded up in here. I don't know if this will be here if you don't have the purchase player's handbook, but there will be some information no matter what. And then other relative abilities that you can't really choose are already filled in for you. Now we're into abilities, and there's many different ways you can do it. You can actually use Roll20 to roll your stats. I've not done this yet, but I have taken a look at it, and it's actually really easy. You can use standard array, which is just going to give you stat options, which are 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. But for my group lately, what we've been doing is the point buy system. So let's just stick to that. We're going to go into our point buy, and here you can choose which stats you want to use for your character. I happen to know off the top of my head what the racial stats for Dragonborn are, but you could actually go back to your race tab if you can't remember them. So Dragonborn gets +2 to strength, +1 to charisma. So we want a barbarian to be as strong as possible. So we're going to give him 15 +2. That's going to give him a strength of 17. So he's going to have a modifier of 3. Dexterity is a great stat for a Dragonborn. So for now, let's select 12. Constitution we want to keep relatively high. I'm going to go to 12. And we don't want to go super low in intelligence. So why don't we try out 11s? And then maybe a 12 for charisma, and then you can adjust it as you want, or you can start over again with the clear assignment up here. But that's not bad for now, actually. So why don't we keep going to background? All right, so you can pick your character's background here. These are all the backgrounds related from the player's handbook. And why don't we take something off type, which is always fun. We could take something like folk hero or hermit. Actually, I know someone who wanted to do sage, so let's take sage. All right, and so you see the 2 proficiencies that you get are over here. You can pull all the information from the background here. You get your language proficiencies. You get 2 for being a sage. So the ones that are dulled out are ones that you've already gotten, like Draconic and Common for our Dragonborn. So why don't we take something relatively common like Elvish, and then it's always nice to take something uncommon like Goblin. All right, here you have your specialty that you can choose, and why don't we take Professor. Now here are the personality traits. You can select from the list, or you can roll for them here to take one at random. Or even in my group, we really don't use these personality trait, ideal, bond, flaw features, so I'm just going to leave this blank, which you can do in Roll20. If you leave anything important blank, it will tell you to do it over again, but for stuff like this, it'll actually just let you proceed without them. All right, how would you like to choose your equipment? We're in the equipment tab. There's 2 different ways you can do it. You can start with money, and then it'll pop up a screen for you to buy things. My group's doing class equipment. I think that's actually really balanced, so let's keep going into there. And it's going to ask you to choose any martial weapon. So we're going to go with a maul, which is just a really big hammer, basically. And then we can take 2 hand axes or any simple weapon. I think I'm going to go with the 2 hand axes there. And then the rest of the equipment is automatically loaded. It's not that much for barbarians. Spells is just going to be empty because barbarians can't cast spells, but if you had a wizard or a sorcerer or a warlock, here you'll pick all your spells basically. Feats. So feats you get at level 4, or if you're a human taking the variant feature, you can pick them at level 1. So if I had a variant human, I'd be picking my feats right now. Maybe I'll do a second video in which I choose a variant human wizard, and we'll get to see these 2 tabs. Bio. Okay, so your player is basically just going to fill out themselves, and they can add the age, height, weight, eyes, hair color, skin of the character. There's also some background information about Dragonborns, which is the race of the character. Will be listed here, and will give you ideas about choosing a character's name, as well as various other background information about the race, so you can sort of flesh out your character's history. Now we're in the review section, basically, and as you can see, any things that we failed to pick will be in red, but none of this stuff is super important, so we're okay, and the characters can just change it later if they want, so I'm going to do apply changes. Alright, so this is our new character sheet for our character. He's a barbarian at level 1. He's got the sage background, he's chaotic good, he's dragonborn. You can see all this stuff down here, basically. All of his stuff's been picked out, and another great thing is that all of his relevant abilities are automatically filled out. So before the character mancer, we had to write this stuff in ourselves or even just copy paste it, and so this is just a lot easier. Another thing you don't have to fill out with the character mancer is class resources. Up here you have your personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. I tend to just write in things like attunement and some equipment information over here. it won't make a big difference either way. So you can sort of write in whatever you want. Here, if they have any tool proficiencies, you can fill that stuff in. Some races automatically get those. Some backgrounds give you those as well. Not too many you get from classes, but the inventory is managed over here. I like to add an option right at the top if you're using an encumbrance system, and you can put the encumbrance limit right there. Gold, if you want to have your characters roll for gold, the top option is copper, silver, and then gold right here. Let's take a look at the character on the field now and attach this character sheet to this character on the field. So I'm going to double click on the top bar, which actually just drops this onto the field like that. You can see it's transparent, and I'm going to zoom in with the zoom in function over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this token, double click on it, and we're going to select here, and we can scroll down to, or we can just look, or just hit the letter G to get to our guy a little faster. And we're looking for our character Grogzilla. Okay. Now what you do is you go over here and you can hit H to scroll down to where HP is, and that's going to tie this character's HP to this model. I'm going to do the same thing with AC. And now for my NPC monsters, I tend to put in the character's speed, but really you can do whatever you want here with bar number 2. Lately I've started to do temporary hit points, but it's whatever you want basically. Let's close this. CT. Let's see. Okay, I can't find temporary hit points right now, so I'm just going to list this as nothing. And we're going to save that after we set up our character's vision. So generally speaking, everyone's running around with torchlight. That's going to be 40 feet of bright light, 20 feet of dim light. I'm running a half scaling thing in my campaign just because the size limitations of Roll20 make it a little bit unreasonable to have such a wide light radius. So we're doing half of maximum vision, which is 20 feet and 10 feet of dim light. And we're going to hit all players see light so that this character is actually holding a torch, as well as this character has sight, which is going to give this token the ability to see around the screen, and we don't really need to worry about the rest of these guys right now. So we're going to save changes, and now this character is now attached to this character sheet. When I close this, hold shift and double click, it pops up his character sheet. Now, when we first started, we had this default token, but this token has changed, so that's why we're going to go in and remove. And now we're going to unclick, re-click, and use selected token. Now anytime we drag this character onto the field from our journal tab, we're going to get this guy exactly the way he is in the character sheet, which is really, really convenient and easy. Okay, so it only takes 300 experience points to get through level 1, so generally speaking these guys are going to level up very quickly. Why don't we level this guy up, and I'll show you some easier ways to do that. Let's get him up to, why don't we do level 3, that shouldn't be too much. For the next part, generally speaking, you want a copy of the player's handbook. We are going to actually use the compendium of Roll20 because it just makes life a little bit easier. So we're going to go up here into the compendium tab, and the character's race basically doesn't change from level 1. There'll be a few minor things. For example, a Dragonborn's Breath weapon will upgrade at level 5. But for the most part, race really doesn't change past level 1. So we're going to go to the class feature within compendium, and that's going to pull up a list of all of our classes and Barbarian. So we're going to hold Barbarian over here and our character sheet over here, and we're just going to follow along and upgrade everything 2 levels. Alright, so we're just scrolling down. There's just some background information on the Barbarian class, and here is the layout of everything you get from Barbarian. At second level, proficiency bonus doesn't change, but you gain Reckless Attack, Danger Sense, Primal Path. Rage is increased by 1, and rage damage does not change. So right now the only thing that we really want to change is our rages, so we're going to go over here to class resources and change rages to 3. The rest of these guys we'll get to in a second. Alright, scrolling down, we get to class features. Not much of this stuff will change here, but hit points will. So hit points at first level is going to be 12 plus our con modifier. So we can see here at our hit points, it's 12 plus our 1 con modifier. At successive levels, it's going to be 1d12 or 7 plus con modifier. So that's players have the option to either roll 1d12 or just take 7 plus the con modifier. If you know anything about math, you understand that taking 7 is definitely the better idea. You will always, on average, take a higher number than if you just took d12, because 7 is more than half of d12 if you average it. Another thing is, if any of your players in your party take the rolling system for hit points, it could become a situation that's a little bit hard for you to track as a DM, because if they ever change their con modifiers, you have to retroactively calculate hit points. If it's just one player in the party, it's not that big a deal, but if everyone's thinking about doing it, you may want to set some ground rules as to whether or not they can roll hit points. So let's just say this guy is going to take the number, and really need a calculator for this, but we'll do 7 times 2 plus 2 for the con, and that's going to be 16, and we're going to add that to the 13 that we have now. That'll take us to 29 hit points. So 29 hit points is the new hit points for this character. So we've taken care of that. Proficiencies and saving throws aren't going to change, neither is the equipment. Rage we've already talked about. Unarmored defense is an ability that he starts off with. So we're looking for the first ability that you get that isn't one of the starter abilities. It's going to be a reckless attack. And one problem you get sometimes from copy and pasting within Roll20 is a weird formatting issue, which I think you're going to see right here. If we copy paste it into here, yeah, as you can see, it sort of is kind of jerky and stops in weird places. So we'll do it from 2 different places and see what looks better. I'm going to cut this reckless attack and put it into the title up here. And you can change the source and source type, but it's really not all that important. So as you can see, it doesn't look too bad for this. So we're going to leave it in as reckless attack. And the next thing you're going to get is the danger sense. So we're going to copy paste that in. And we're going to hit the little plus sign down here. It's going to populate a new box. I'm going to hit paste, scroll up, cut out the danger sense and paste it into this box. And so now our barbarian has the 2 new abilities that he gained from leveling up to level 3. And then leveling up to level 2, now he gets his 1 ability that he gets for level 3, which is that he chooses his primal path, and we'll get into what that means in a minute. I'm just going to paste this here. Okay, and so now the character has a choice to make on the primal path. So there's going to be a lot of information here for the levels going up to 20. We're not going to worry about them too much. We're just going to scroll down to where it says primal paths, and why don't we have this guy take the path of the totem warrior. So we're going to copy paste this into the box over here, and I'm actually going to copy paste the whole thing for totem warrior, going all the way down to the list of choices that we have. So copy, put it into here, paste, and actually once your players are more competent, or if you have players that aren't first timers, they can probably do this themselves, but for a lot of people who aren't familiar with Roll20, this just makes life a lot easier. And so there's going to be one of these that they choose, so why don't we choose aspect of the wolf over here, copy and paste this into here, cut and paste this into here. So now actually their character sheet has every single thing built into it for their character, and their character is basically, this is what a level 3 character would look like as the barbarian. Let's see if there's anything else we want to cover. All your character's proficiencies are down here. You can hit this tab for biographic information that we didn't fill out during character creation. And over here we have spells. There's not really that much that we could talk about for the barbarian. So again, I may do this again with a wizard human variant so that we can hit every possible option. But I do want to talk about settings. You're going to want to warn your players not to go in here and start playing around with stuff, because it can become very difficult for you as a DM to fix it back to the way it was. But a few things that are really great is if you make your own characters to fight against your group, you can hit this button to turn them into NPCs. For role queries, I recommend doing advantage toggle, and that'll give you this toggle up here for when you have advantage and when you don't. That's very useful. Automatic damage roll is really, really useful. So automatic roll damage and critical, and that'll make them basically like enemies. They don't have to choose this option, it's really up to them. If a character has an ability that gives them a bonus to either their attack or damage, like for example a barbarian does, you can select show global damage modifier, and I'm just going to show what that looks like in the screen over here, and you can see rage damage And so when the character is raging, they can click this box, and when they're not raging, they can unclick the box. And then you can also do that for things like accuracy with attack modifier up here. And then spells go with save modifier, skill modifier. Yeah, so auto level calculations should be on. Encumbrance, if you're using it, can be selected here. Ammo tracking is only available if you have API. If the API is going to require a paid-for account, I'm actually running one on this account. There's 2 levels. I think there's one that's $5 a month, one that's $10 a month. API is only available on the $10 a month account, which is what I'm running. And so the ammo tracking is really useful if you have characters that do a lot of range attacking. And I like to add this exhaustion tracker as well. And you can take a look at that. It's going to pop up over here, and as the characters increase their level of exhaustion, it'll let you know what effects they are now suffering. And I think that's going to be it for the most part. We don't need to go into this stuff in sort of a basic tutorial. And that gets you your character creation for sort of beginners. Like I said, more advanced players should be able to handle this themselves, but if anyone's having difficulty, this is a great way to help them out. Alright, thanks guys for watching the video.